all the audience here. Uh, is there anyone here have any kind of example of about STEM education for social inclusion before I start? All right. If there anyone have a story about or an example about that, please tell me because I want to know any kind of STEM education for social inclusion examples like us. So first of all, I want to introduce myself. I'm Isra from Lybotics community. I'm a coordinator there. Um, I started my journey in Lybotics for 1.5 years, but it's like not a 1 year. It's like so many years for me because so many things happens in really short time here in our community. Uh, First of all, I want to talk what we do, or the most thing that we focus in nowadays. Um, if you know first community or if you heard about it before, that's what we do here in Lybotics. Actually, Lybotics started from joining or starting a team in first community, and then the idea about creating Lybotics the organization came from that. um, what we do, we are starting or launching teams around Libya. In just 2 years, now we have about 90 team. You can't imagine that we really started or we really published about 90 team in just two years. That's what we see because what we see or what you see, guys, it's really a huge number. 90 teams in just 2 years. It's not that. It's not that small number. Um, I mean, a team each team include about 15 member, and it's not only 15 member. Each member of them have a community around them, and yeah, that's it. I think the idea, you got the idea about that. I mean, it's it has so impact in our community, or a huge impact in our community. Um, so let's go back to our topic, which is STEM education for social inclusion. Um, Starting a team or creating a team um, from people from different areas, from different from different. I mean, have different backgrounds. They are not there. They haven't been before in touch. So I mean that's. I mean, I see it's the perfect example for STEM education and for social inclusion. They do STEM. They build robots. They compete in the competitions each year. They do community work. They do not also building robots. It's more than robots. They also do anything anything about STEM, like building a machines for COVID-19 pandemic, like building or creating an idea that solve any problem in the community. So that's it. I mean, it's more than robots. It's having friends. It's learning. It's engaging with the community. It's building the person. It's building the kids or the leaders for the future. I think that's it for me. Any question about that? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Is there anyone have a question about that? Is there anything not clear about me, about my story, about our what we do? So we are done here, I think. Eliza, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much. Of course, if there's any questions afterwards for Ezra, she's going to be with us, and you can use the chat.
If you want to know more about what you do, I think Eliza, you can share with them the link of our website.
Hello, is Israel gone?
Hello? Hello? Enter, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. And once again, I'm introducing myself, and my name is Takemore Mklanga from Zimbabwe. I'm representing Amalgamated Road Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, and my presentation title is on the inclusive education, and our topic is education for all, local approaches to leave no one behind in the global. In the Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, I'm the Secretary for Young Teachers, and my role is to mobilize and organize young teachers in their activism, and also to fight for inclusive access to education for all. You know, our problem in Global South is accessibility to education. So I will begin my introduction. In this presentation, I will reflect on the topic and the theme of the meeting as it relates to the specific challenges of teachers, learners, and education stakeholders working on education in rural communities in the Global South. I will use evidence from my own experience in my Zimbabwean context. I will also rely on the official information from the partners working on the other context to present the support my case. As starting point, it should be noted that inclusive education is an important pillar as per SDG4. SDG4 is our sustainable development goal for education, which is accessibility, which talk about the accessible to education, and which talk about the education for all. I will also present 4 key issues that are important for the goal to be achieved. Okay. Also, my first goal is accessibility to education in the rural and marginalized community. In much of the Global South, education for all remain inclusive due to number of challenges ranging from funding, lack of facilities, and conflicts. We know in the rural areas in Global South, our education is not being funded, and it lacks a lot of inclusivity. Whereby in the rural areas, you know, for example, here in Zimbabwe, if you are born handicapped, if you are born blind, if you are in rural areas here in Zimbabwe, you don't have to access education because of your challenges, your physical challenges, because you are not able to walk through the steps. You are not able to talk with the people. So these are some of the challenges. So in countries experiencing, and we have some of the country which is experiencing a violent conflict like in South Sudan, Central African Republic, in Mozambique, and in Mozambique is the next country to us where there is a Cabo Delgado conflict, where there is a lot of terrorism. So it means if a country is experiencing the terrorism, it means the learning have to stop, because people, they are no longer going to school. They will be running away because there's a lot of violence, gun shootout, and a lot of stuff which will be happening in this country. In countries experiencing violent conflict like this South Sudan, and to have the latest example of Burkina Faso, where there's a military coup which is taking place, it means learning have just stopped in Burkina Faso. So we know the accessibility to education will be not that. So among other schools are often closed, and that's denying learners, teachers, and other stakeholders the ability to obtain and also deliver on education. Beyond these obvious barriers, learners in the rural areas and marginalized communities suffer from a bottleneck like religious. Here in Zimbabwe, some different religions, there are some Christians, and Christians have got a lot of departments. There's apostles, there's Pentecostal, there's Protestant, and the apostles, they say young girls, they have to marry early if you are a girl, and if you just commit to sex whilst you are still young, like at the age of 12 years, 10 years, if you just have sex with someone, it means that you are now ready for marriage, and someone can just volunteer to marry you, and that is the law. And to have the issue of a girl in Zimbabwe by the name called Memory Machai, who died during the time of deliverance, but the girl was 10 years old, and she's a member of an apostolic church. But that campaign ran viral in 2020 when this issue it happened. But still, as the stakeholders, as the teachers in Zimbabwe, we are condemning such practices, because whenever this type of religious, the apostles, even the politicians even went to them and preached their way, that we are the politicians, we are the ruling part, support us, vote for us. And whenever this issue is happening, we are seeing the perpetrators, they are very free, they are doing the normal life, and everything is going well for them. But we need police bearers, we need the police that will ask the questions, will ask for accountability. Why is why this such things is happening to our children? But it's very unfortunate, because those people, the apostles here in Zimbabwe, they are the one who will be supporting the ruling government, and they are the one who is supporting the violation of human rights. And in some region, and lack of supporting of like infrastructures, like bridges to access education during rainy season. In Zimbabwean context, like there are some students who come from far away from school, and they cross some bridges, they cross some rivers. So if there is rainfall, especially in the rain season, like now we are approaching the rain season, if it became rain during the rain season and they're at home, they will not have access to education, because they need to cross the bridges to connect to their schools. But here in our country, those people will not access the school, because the bridge will be flooded, and they need someone to access them to help them to cross the bridge. And in my context, to my school where I teach, at some point, if there is rain, the rain happens after the student came to school, it means the student will not go back home. They will sleep in the classroom where there's no blankets and where there's no some staff to support them. So my second issue is on the remuneration and the condition of work for the teachers. You know, the remuneration of teachers, especially in the global south, teachers are earning low salaries, and it means if teachers are not earning enough, it means their motivation, there's no motivation, because I think the salaries, if a earning teacher will be motivated to work very well, and if you are not being paid, it means that you are not working enough and you are not doing the great work. So teachers remain underpaid in global, even especially when in the context of COVID-19 lockdown period. This COVID-19 period has exposed this gap even more. While governments implemented remote learning, teachers in much of the global south were too poor to catch up. You know, in the global south during the COVID-19 pandemic, most of the people, most of our students stopped learning because teachers were not reporting for duty, and there were no plans for people for learning to continue. So decades of the funding of poor remuneration and condition of services has damaged the education in developing countries, because lack of motivation that I've talking about, the motivation of teachers and service flight. After this pandemic, you know, in the developing country, they lost a lot of expect in health sector, in education sector. So most of the teachers, they are flying, they are moving away from our countries, from global south, to move to the countries where they can be funded, where there's a lot of fund, where there's salaries which attract them. So we are also facing another problem whereby education is being underfunded here in global south, and our teachers are being attracted by the developing country like in UK, in America, and some of. Sorry.
Thank you so much. It's just the time's up. We only had 5 minutes, but we will have more time in the Q&A. It was just 5 minutes.
Okay. Oh, so my time is up.
Yes. But no worries. There will be more time afterwards.
Okay, thank you. I can give another person a chance.
Thank you so much. Perfect. So now I hand over to Juan. Elena, on behalf of Juan.
Well, hello to all. I'm part of the team of Asociación Azul. Juan belongs and leaders this team. We have been working in the inclusion of children with disabilities in school for many years now, 30 years. And we are part of a Latin American movement for inclusive education. Juan was going to tell you, he cannot be here for connection reasons, but internet and lack of accessibility to reach this place. He was excluded from special school. But then, thank you to some training he got on alternative communication, he could go to school when he was almost 10 or 11 years old. And now he has got a degree in literature and Spanish, and he's a fellow of the International Disability Alliance, and he is member of Civicus and has been a fellow of Civicus too. So, talking about inclusive education is the first thing we see is how many children and young people are excluded from school. UNESCO estimates that 2,058 million children and young adults between 6 and 15 years old have or never started school or have abandoned it. It's the 70% from the total. At least 1/3 of all these children out of school have a disability. So we have to think that 86 million approximately of children with disabilities are not at school. Next, please. So this is the lemma of a movement that went to the Olympics 2 or 3 years ago with the 15, because people with disabilities are the 15% of the population of the world, estimated, of course. So let's talk about us. It's a lot, there's a lot of people, the 15% of the population. Next, please. So if we are the 15%, in a class of 30, there should be more or less 4 students with a disability in each classroom. But probably if we ask all of you, all of us, it was like this in our classes at school, the answer would be that no, it isn't like this, and you seldom see a child with a disability at school. Next, please. So, inclusive education was born as a strategy to include students with disabilities. When it was practiced in some countries, especially in some states inside the countries, for instance, New Brunswick in Canada is a place where really they have inclusive education. There are experiences in many countries in the north and in the south. And then it was seen that inclusive education was for every child that was at risk of being marginalized, and that the strategies that were used to facilitate education for all students, for students with disabilities, those strategies were very useful for every child, and more for those that are at risk because they speak a different language, because they have a different culture, because they have situations at home that put them in a bad emotions. Following, please, the next, please. So, what is inclusive education? Then I will explain what is this of general comment. It's something that is very broad, it's wide, but it's a process. It's a process where all children, in their individuality, you know that in a class, you don't have an homogeneous population. You have diversity because all children are different and they learn in different ways and they face different barriers. So you have that in mind when you are planning education in a classroom, in every classroom. And you have in mind the barriers that children experience and how to overcome these barriers. You know that education, to be educated, many children and teachers need support, and those support have to be known and have to be in place so that every child can learn. But when you speak about inclusive education, you speak about a change that is very deep, because it has to change the beliefs of teachers and education administrators. It has to change the culture, the policy, and the practices of what we know now as mainstream schools, so that they can really include all learners. And yes, it's the end of discrimination for any reason. Next, please. So, what's inclusion? It's a process. It has to do with the elimination of barriers, and it has to do with the presence, participation, and achievements of all students. So it involves placing emphasis on groups of learners that are at risk of being marginalized, excluded, because they are perceived as with low expectation, as if they are going to have lower achievement. So they start to be perceived as lower achievers, and the expectations of the teachers are low, and all that takes the students to be marginalized and to really have low achievement because everybody is expecting him or her to do so. Next, please. So, inclusive education acknowledges that all children can learn, that they learn at different rates, and teaching has to be flexible. They need to have different methods. A teacher has to have different methods to suit various different learning styles. There need to be a range of methods for supporting children with disabilities or other kinds of situation that puts him in risk. And of course, to select the methods, you have to take into account the local context. Which are these strategies? Well, peer support, which is a very old resource in education that was known centuries ago, to have adult volunteers with disabilities to support students and teachers, students with disabilities and teachers, and to have additional in-service training for teachers and additional support. And this is what Takemore spoke about before, that has to do with more budget for education. And you need to have a strong community at school, to have parental involvement, and to use strategies of corporate learning. Next, please. So, to speak about inclusive education, we need to change the system that has to take commitment and to have more resources to respond. You need to have high expectations about all students. You need support, as we said, for teachers and students. You need monitoring of the process to see that things are going the right way. Strong partnership and participation of all the community, not only teachers or administrators, but you need to include in the team parents and students and organizations of civil society and of persons with disability that can support you. You need to produce a cultural change where you respect and value diversity and where you give place to participation. Next, please.
I don't have any more.
All right. Well, what I wanted to say is that inclusive education is started its legal way with the Statement of Salamanca in 1994. Then we have the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, where they established that education has to be inclusive. And that slide I showed, which said General Comment number 4, is a document that the United Nations launched to explain in detail how, there it is, sorry. General Comment number 4 that explain in detail how states have to do to make education inclusive. And now is Sustainable Development Goal 4 states that education has to be quality and it has to be inclusive. But now we are speaking of inclusion, including, sorry for the repetition, including every student. And what we want to make very strong commitment is that people with disabilities are excluded from education all over the world, and that is a very important issue that we want to bring to the table. But that inclusive education is for every child, is for every population risk of marginalization. We will share with you later on a list of resources and links to places where you can learn more about inclusive education if you are curious or you are interested in it. So you will receive that after the event. Thank you very much in the name of Juan and our organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elena and Juan. And we're now going to give a break to the amazing interpreters who are supporting us today, and everyone else who needs to stretch and drink something or eat something. See you all in 10 minutes, if that's okay. And if you want to stay and keep sending questions or comments, also feel free. But see you in 10. Thank you all.
So it's an open mic for us to catch up and relate.
It's just that there will be no interpretation, so it will be only in English or only
at
in
least
French
I can
or
hear
only
your
in
language.
Spanish.
Where is Entle? She going to have a tea?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're recording, so we can share the recording afterwards. Thanks so much, Vera. It was lovely to connect with you.
No, okay. How's the weather outside? Here we're burning in Botswana. Am I the only one in Botswana here?
Therefore, in 2014, Uganda retreated in the Muscat Agreement to commit 6% of its gross domestic product to the education sector. However, an update of only 2.4% of the GDP has been spent on the sector in the last 5 financial years. That is by the World Bank report of 2015. The National Development Plan 2 projected that Uganda could commit 4.4% of its GDP to the sector in the financial year of 2017-18, but the ministerial policy statement indicates a commitment of only 2.5% of this in this period. So, as my colleague mentioned about inclusive education, I can give you a small hint on that. If I talk about inclusive education, mainly in Uganda, educational settings in which students with disabilities have opportunities to participate and receive support in all aspects of school lifelong peers who do not have disabilities. Now, why should we embrace inclusive education, mostly in Uganda? One is to support civic rights. What do I mean by that? Like all students, those with disabilities have the right to attend regular schools and general education classes. So this gives persons with disabilities opportunity to express their civic rights to education according to SDG Goal 4 and Article 24 and 7 according to the UNCRPD. So, second of all, the importance of inclusive education in Uganda, it acts as an integration in the community. What do I mean by this? Most of the persons in Uganda living with the disabilities growing up and learning together in inclusive schools, many people in their communities had a misconception about them, and the best way to overcome this is to involve the persons with disabilities in the same activities like the able-bodied people. The third importance of inclusive education in Uganda is it gives a sense of belonging and it helps in acceptance of differences for persons living with disabilities. So what do I mean by this? Belonging is like a human need for all the people. Therefore, this makes persons with disabilities to believe in themselves and build their self-esteem. The fourth importance is persons with disabilities, when they inquire inclusive education, they are exposed to varied learning opportunities. What do I mean by this? Varied learning opportunities enables them to grow both socially and academically. The fourth point of the importance of inclusive education is it creates a relationship with peers. Like it creates a relationship between the person who's not disabled and the one who's disabled when they learn together in an inclusive setting. So I end by saying this. Let us try to embrace inclusive education. Let it be in our different communities. Let's learn to embrace inclusive education, because you never know. They always say everyone is a potential victim of disability. So let's try to embrace inclusion wherever we go and wherever we be. Thank you so much. Looking forward for your different questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Susan. As always, very informative, and we always learn something new when we hear you. And very important recommendations. So now, yes, open to questions. Maybe we can start with Ezra with the first question. How do you recruit so many people to join STEM?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
There was a question about recruitment. What is your recruitment strategy in Lybotics?
You mean how we create teams, start teams? I'm sorry, I have a problem with the audio. Okay, can you repeat, please?
What is Lybotics recruitment strategy?
Okay, our strategy, as I said before, we are engaging kids in teams to teach them the STEM education, to teach them how to build robots. And I mean, as we talk about today, the social inclusion, it's teams. Teams. No word more than teams for social inclusion. Is there a problem with my voice?
No, I can hear you. I'm just checking if the person who asked that question has any follow-up, or was that clear? It was
we do also other programs beside the FTC, building FTC teams, our first teams, but the most program showing in public is first programs.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, maybe someone who left the meeting. But if there's any follow-up questions, please raise your hand. Anyone else wants to share? I'm just going to speak quickly in French because there's someone struggling with interpretation. Pour les personnes qui viennent de joindre, il y a l'option d'interprétation simultanée. Donc, vous pouvez choisir en bas de votre écran l'option interprétation c'est un petit globe. Et là, vous choisissez français. Et ça doit marcher, vous allez entendre Elena. Merci. Thank you. Takemore, go for it.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Elisa. My question is how can we promote equal access to education for all, especially when you are taking into consideration of the COVID-19 pandemic, where learners from different background in town and rural areas were not where there was no learning taking place in the classes. But we know some learners in the developing country or in the urban areas were accessing education through Google classes, through Zooms and stuff. But some of the learners in the rural areas were not even earning anything. But during the end of the day, all of them, they have to be tested in the same exam. So how can we try to equate or equalize the access to education for both learners in the rural areas and in the urban communities, or in global south and those from the developed countries? Thank you.
Super good question. Thank you. Anyone wants to take it or share your experience during COVID? How, if you were working on education, providing trainings to people in your communities, how did you face that digital challenge? Just that we all face. Any storytellers? Lessons learned, recommendations, ideas.
Sí, Elena de Argentina. Yo creo que la primera medida sería saber exactamente cuáles fueron las barreras por las que esos estudiantes no pudieron aprender. Y en base a eso, programar cómo atacar cada una de esas barreras. Pero si no hay una decisión política del Estado nacional o local, o digamos del Estado, a solucionar esto es muy difícil. Una vez que se conocen las causas, cuáles fueron las barreras que encontraron, se pueden pensar las estrategias para vencer esas barreras, pero tiene que haber decisión política que está ligado a los fondos también, a la distribución de los fondos, para poder realmente cambiar esa realidad, me parece. Gracias.
Very, very good point. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry you here. I can't hear Elena perfectly, the French interpretation, so I don't know what's the issue. Christine, maybe provide study packs with which these learners can use for reading so that they can catch up for lost time, the resources for reading. Would you like to share a bit more, Christine? Was that your experience? It worked? It worked in 2020?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The use of study packs can also help quite a lot in the learners for them to catch up for the lost time, because there is not going to be a time when they are going to repeat or to be taught what has been taught during the COVID time. So for them, they continue with the syllabus and also be provided with the study pack, which are tailor-made, may be designed for the topics which they did not cover during the COVID era, so that they catch up, or maybe
I don't know if it's me. No. Christine, we lost you.
Okay, I'm here. Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, we lost you.
So, my network is a bit poor due to load sheddings. Okay, so I have seen this method working so that the children or the learners can learn during their free time when there is ample time for them to read, look back. And in most cases, the syllabus is sort of a continuous thing. They learn a concept in a certain grade, and in the next grade, it's just a continuation, or they deepen the concept. So it would be so difficult for the children to grasp the information at a later stage when they did not learn. So I have seen the use of DISC, the use of study packs, helping these learners trying to catch up what they lost during the COVID time.
Yeah, all about innovation, making sure everyone is on the same track. Thank you very much. Takemore, you as a teacher, what was your experience? I know you asked the question, but do you want to share? How do you make sure everyone has access?
Okay. Oh, thank you so much. And I'm also I will also need to apply to my first president of my union, Christine, who has just submitted the powerful presentation about that. So what I think as a teacher in Zimbabwe rural areas is that as Global South was now, I don't need to talk about Zimbabwe only, but I need to talk about Global South. I think our education is not being funded equally. Some of the people, especially in the rural areas, they will be just left like that because they're in the rural areas. And when it comes to times of like exams, times of competition, you know, even in sports, sometimes in some talent like music and stuff, some of the people in the rural area, they will be left like that because if a school in a rural area like they fail to fund themselves to go to the music competition that is happening in the nearest town 30 kilometers away, and they don't have money to travel to that place, it means they are not going there, and it will disadvantage those students who are talented in music. It means that those students will not compete in the music. So I think at the first things comes first is that we have to try and our best to advocate for equal funding of education. Whether you are in rural area or you are in urban area, we have to access the same education. And whenever there are some competition, we have to do this competition the same as some in whether in rural or in urban, have to also do the same with them. So I think my solution around those accessibility to education is that how can we advocate for the policies that will promote accessibility and equality to education for both learners in urban areas and in rural areas. I think for that, I think that's where my submission is. Like, we are talking about COVID-19 and Cyclone Idai in Zimbabwe, but the government of Zimbabwe, they don't have any policy for education equalization fund. The education equalization fund will work when there's some emergency, when there's cyclone, when there's pandemic. There should be a fund that is set aside to promote or to for education to going forward, whether those challenges are existing or not existing. We are talking about internet accessibilities in Zimbabwe, and in our rural areas. You can teach, like myself, I'm teaching ICT in the rural areas of Zimbabwe, but in the place where I'm teaching ICT, there's no internet access, there's no electricity, there's no computers. I'm only using my laptop that I will be charging during the weekend that means if I have the money to go back to town where I can charge my laptop and I show my student how to operate a computer, and they need to be tested on that, but they don't have that internet in their rural areas. So I think that's the starting point that we have to do. We have to also think around how can we encourage our policy makers, like here in Zimbabwe, in our union, our Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe. Now we are running a campaign, Education Vote, whereby we are mobilizing parents and even those students, those people, youth out of school who are eligible to vote, to register to vote and vote for the candidate that promotes education policies. So I think that's our starting point. We have to vote or include government officials which support education policies. I think I will end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Takemore. You can hear a lot of recommendations around having time and to set aside and reflect why these problems, why these barriers, what are these systems that are blocking, to really convene and see what's the solution once the problem is understood. I'm gonna now, is there any other question or comments that anyone else wants to share? Nope. Okay, so I'm gonna hand it over to Juan, who's going to share the key takeaways from the very recent Transforming Education Summit that happened last month in New York, convened by the Office of the UN Youth Envoy. Bianca was here. I think Manuela is also here joining us to complement, but Juan made a lot of contributions and it's going to present these key takeaways. Also, any questions, reactions, please use the emojis and the chat box at the below of your screen.
Bueno, de nuevo, soy Elena de Argentina, exponiendo en el material preparado por Juan Coveñas para ustedes. Bueno, la cumbre Transformando la Educación, Transforming Education Summit, se llevó a cabo en Nueva York el 16 al 19 de septiembre del 2022. Y en esa cumbre, a la que Civicus contribuyó durante las sesiones preparatorias, se lanzó una declaración de los jóvenes sobre la transformación de la educación. Está muy interesante todo el documento que Juan preparó para mostrar los compromisos finales. La siguiente, por favor. Bueno, son 5 compromisos y lo que dicen es que nosotros, los jóvenes del mundo, en base a toda una serie de consideraciones previas, nos comprometemos a seguir sosteniendo solidariamente con todas las personas jóvenes del mundo y en toda nuestra diversidad, particularmente mujeres y niñas jóvenes, LGBTIQ+, jóvenes, personas con discapacidad, refugiados, inmigrantes, indígenas y otros grupos vulnerables y marginados hacia la transformación de la educación. O sea, luego continuar abogando para transformar la educación de manera individual y colectiva a través de movimientos sociales, organizaciones de la sociedad civil, soluciones generadas y lideradas por jóvenes y mucho más. Es decir, primero sería la solidaridad para luchar por todos en pie de igualdad, después el compromiso de trabajar y comprometerse en la incidencia política para la transformación de la educación a través de la sociedad civil. Luego el tercero, continuar actuando sobre los que toman las decisiones, especialmente los Estados miembros, que son los responsables del entero proceso de diseño, ejecución, llevar a cabo y monitorear y evaluar las demandas, los pedidos que se han hecho antes, que están en el documento, y que aseguren que los marcos de responsabilidad tengan perspectiva de género. La siguiente, por favor. El compromiso 4, nosotros los jóvenes del mundo estamos comprometidos a lanzar un plan de acción coordinado por la red de jóvenes sobre el Objetivo de Desarrollo Sostenible 4 para llevar adelante y sostener las demandas que están en la primera parte del documento más allá de la cumbre. Movilizar a los interesados para que continúe creciendo el movimiento global por la transformación de la educación y equipar a los jóvenes con las habilidades necesarias para abogar por la educación de calidad a nivel local y global. Y por último, promover el diálogo y la cooperación intergeneracional, intercultural e interreligiosa en los sistemas educativos a través de todas las comunidades, países y regiones para crear un mundo mejor construido sobre la solidaridad, la diversidad, la empatía, la comprensión mutua y el respeto. Como dije, entonces, estos son los compromisos de los movimientos de jóvenes sobre la transformación de la educación. Tienen el documento completo en ese link que luego de la sesión les será enviado a todos. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Any reactions or questions? Perfect. I'm now passing it to Takemore, who's gonna close with final remarks, sharing some recommendations. If you all have recommendations as well, please share them. We still have a few minutes, maybe 15 minutes left, so we can do a brainstorming here.
Thank you so much. So as I'm the one who is responsible for closing remarks, so my first point is I would like to invite each and every person who have got his or her recommendation that he might think that will help us to for our inclusive education and that equal opportunity for all. That if you are having any recommendation, you can just state or raise your hand or just mention it in the chat box. So I'm giving the floor to all of us that have a recommendation to recommend, and I will add on what I'm thinking and the recommendation, and after all, I can add the action plan.
Hello.
Yes.
Sorry, I did not raise my hand. I was saying to make education be inclusive, I think it has to come from where the policies are drafted from the beginning. I think one of the compliance of it has to be structural in terms of physical planning. Plans have to be, it has to be in their footprints that they're accessible to people with disabilities, especially if a double story, at least they need to have an elevator or need to have a ramp or a parking spot for wheelchairs. I think it has to start with the planning side of the structures. Our buildings, those teaching buildings are accessible to people with disabilities? Do they have nursing facilities for those people? And I think it has to form part of the training manual for teachers, that they have to be able to be in a position to take care of those people with disability. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my brother. I think that is a very key point. This is the issue of accessibility. We have to make sure that our schools are accessible for both learners with learning and disabilities to access the classrooms. You find in some of the schools, especially in Zimbabwe rural And in Global South rurals, if you go to a school, you can go to a school where there are steps, so there's no rails for people who are not able to walk, who are using the wheelchair. They can't even access the classroom. I think that's also the key point that we have to do, that our schools must be accessible for everyone, a person with disability and a person with a disability, and a lot of stuff. I think, is there anyone who also want to contribute before I add on? Okay, if there's no anyone who want to add on, I think my from the discussion that we have done today, I think my key recommendation is that how can we enable the environment for education in emergencies? What are we put to place? What policies are we put to place to work during the times of emergency, so that education will continue? Because there's another problem that said you can stop learning, you can't stop learning, you keep on learning. So how can we how can we continue to learn even if the environment is not conducive for learning, like interaction between teacher to people, interaction in the classrooms? And my second is that how can education be inclusive and remote learning alternative? How can we include that whenever the students are not able to come in the classroom, how can we facilitate remote learning alternatives so that students will always learn? I take that point from the contribution from Christine when she was talking about giving some people work, study packs, and people will come and pick up the packs and go back home. They'll post them in the box and come back again, doing the work and post it, and the teacher will take it from there. And also, how can we capacitate like educators for education in the emergencies? Like during the time of COVID-19, we find that teachers faced a lot of challenges. The economy faced a lot of challenges, but as the stakeholders of education, how can we capacitate educators and learners for education during time of these emergencies? And my last point is how can we support the system for continual learning, because learning should always continue. So how can we support it as the stakeholders of education? And as my action plan, I'm suggesting that we have to number one, because I've just put only 3 key action plans. So I'm suggesting for Safe School campaign for Global South. Why did I suggest that we have to do a Safe School campaign for Global South? Is that our schools in Global South are not safe. Sometimes there's a lot of there's some drug cases in our schools whereby students coming to school abusing some drugs and doing a lot of stuff. Sometimes in some areas, like in South America, students going to school with guns. And here in Zimbabwe and in Southern Africa, whereby the political parties abusing the school children, the school premises for their political rallies. And when they're doing those political rallies, it means that students will not learning, and the student will be forced to attend political rallies, and the teachers will be forced to attend to fund for the political activities like the independence celebration here in Zimbabwe, the Heroes Day celebration in Zimbabwe. So all of these things we should have to come up with the policy whereby we define what is a school and what we need a school to be and what we don't need in our schools. We don't need the political parties, the political people to intervene in our in the running of the school, of the day-to-day business of the school. Because like here in Zimbabwe, some schools are regarded as the property of the government, and the government is the ruling part. So whenever ruling part wants to do whatever they want to do, they will use those schools, they will use school buses to ferry people from place to place. But that is abusing the school, because the school must be independent. So I think we have to run a campaign whereby we are saying, what do we need our school to be look like? And the key to action number 2 is that how can we sustain financing the campaign, the campaigns for education campaign? We have to have a sustainable financing campaign, got education. So I think our education must be funded, like during these times of the times of emergence. We also need to have a plan that has been set aside, that if these things happen, what do we need to do for learning to take place, to learning to continue, because we always need our learning to continue. And the key action number 3 is to launch an action, research, and solidarity platform. I like it when Juan was contributing that about solidarity. I like solidarity too much because I'm a labor activist and I'm a teacher. So we have to launch action, research, and solidarity platform whereby we support each other. When education is not observed, is not being respected in Nicaragua, in Algeria, in Nigeria, in Zimbabwe, people from South Africa, from Zambia, have to speak about that and send some message of solidarity to the people, that you guys, we have to respect education. Education is our future. Education is the backbone of our economy. So if you start abusing these school resources, these education people about this and that, we are coming for you. So I think the solidarity, we have to support each other. Whenever there's emergency in Zimbabwe, people from South Africa must support the Zimbabwe. And when there's a problem in Nicaragua, people from Zimbabwe must send solidarity messages to South Africa. I think I thank you. Maybe I will share with you most of my presentation, because I'm just waffling, because in my first presentation I didn't present all of the things, but I shared email with you, and if you need my presentation, I can share with you. Thank you.
So as Takemore was saying, we have a few links to share with you all if you want to learn more about this issue and connect with anything existing campaign at the global or regional or national level. So please don't hesitate to take a look at this. And if you want to connect with Juan, here it's his association details, Asociación Azul. They are in all the social media platforms. Same if you want to connect with Takemore, it's the artists, teachers group. With Susan, it's the Cerebral Palsy Uganda Association, and with Ezra, it's Lybotics. I just want to conclude saying thank you so much to everyone here for joining and participating and sharing your stories, but a special thank you to all the amazing work that Juan, Elena, Takemore, Susan, and Ezra did, and Said in the vaccines, and of course Said, Salim, and Elena in supporting this event, but especially Juan, who was leading and Takemore the the conception of all this conversation, and also the great work that you're all doing, putting literally and not exaggerating your lives in the front lines to defend this important right, which is not only to benefit our communities for their development, but also for their survival. So thank you all for the amazing work that you're all doing. Keep going, and we stay in touch. The doors are open. We will have another Global Perspectives event, the last one of the year, at the end of November. We are still planning how that one will look like, so we'll share the invitations through the Civicus membership mailing list. If you haven't joined Civicus, then don't hesitate and don't wait to go and fill out your membership form visiting www.civicus.org/join. And if you want to organize an event yourself, also feel free to reach out, and we can meet in the next planning meeting that will be held at the end of this month. Yeah, thank you so much. And if anyone has any other questions, we still have like 6 minutes for open space. We can stay here. Otherwise, thank you so much, everyone.